Every morning you wake up and face a series of choices. What to wear, what to eat, whether to check your phone or exercise first, whether to tackle that difficult conversation or avoid it one more day. These might seem like small decisions, but here's the truth. Your life is nothing more than the sum total of all the choices you've made up until this moment. Think about that for a second. Everything in your life right now, your relationships, your career, your health, your happiness, your bank account, your opportunities, all of it exists because of choices you made. Some were conscious and deliberate. Others were made on autopilot. But every single outcome you're experiencing is the result of a decision. And here's the most empowering part. If you don't like where you are right now, you can choose differently, starting today. This audiobook is about reclaiming your power as a decision maker. It's about understanding that you're not a victim of circumstances. You're the architect of your life. Every day presents you with countless opportunities to choose who you want to be and what kind of life you want to create. But most people don't see it this way. They feel like life is happening to them. They blame their circumstances, their past, other people, bad luck. They say things like, "I had no choice," when the reality is they did have a choice. They just didn't like the options. Let me be clear. I'm not saying every choice is easy. I'm not saying you can control everything that happens to you. Life throws curveballs. People disappoint us. Plans fall apart. Unexpected challenges arise. But you always have a choice in how you respond. Viktor Frankl, a Holocaust survivor and psychiatrist, wrote about his experience in Nazi concentration camps. He said that even in the most horrific circumstances imaginable, the one thing that could never be taken from him was his freedom to choose his attitude. When everything else was stripped away, his freedom, his family, his dignity, he still had the power to choose how he would respond to his suffering. If he could find choice in a concentration camp, you can find it in your life. The problem is that many of us have given away our power without realizing it. We've developed habits of thinking and behaving that keep us stuck. We make the same choices over and over, then wonder why our lives don't change. We wait for something external to change first. A better job, more money, the right relationship, before we start making different choices. But that's backwards. Change starts with choice, and choice starts with awareness. In this audiobook, we're going to explore 10 powerful truths about choices and how they shape your life. You'll learn why you make the choices you do, how to break free from patterns that aren't serving you, and most importantly, how to start making choices that align with who you want to become. We'll talk about taking responsibility, overcoming fear, the power of small decisions, choosing your thoughts, and designing a life you actually want to live. Each chapter will give you practical insights and tools you can use immediately. But I need something from you. I need you to be honest with yourself. It's easy to read about making better choices while continuing to make the same old ones. Real change requires you to confront the ways you've been avoiding responsibility, playing small, or settling for less than you deserve. Are you ready for that level of honesty? Are you ready to stop making excuses and start making empowered choices? If your answer is yes, then let's begin this journey together. Because here's what I know. 5 years from now, your life will either be dramatically different or disappointingly the same. The difference won't be luck or circumstances or other people. The difference will be the choices you make starting today. You have more power than you realize. You have more options than you think. And you have the ability to create a life that's far better than the one you're currently living. But it all starts with one simple acknowledgement. Your life is your responsibility, and every day is full of choices. So let's explore what happens when you truly embrace that truth. Let's discover what becomes possible when you stop being passive and start being intentional. Let's unlock the power that's been inside you all along, the power to choose. Your life is waiting. Let's make it extraordinary. Chapter 1. You are where you are because of your choices. Let's start with an uncomfortable truth. If you're unhappy with any area of your life, it's because of the choices you've made. I know that might sting. Your immediate reaction might be to think of all the reasons that's not true. But I didn't choose to lose my job. I didn't choose for my relationship to end. I didn't choose to have this health problem. And you're right. You didn't choose those specific events. But you did choose how you prepared for them, how you responded to them, and what you did next. And those choices determined where you ended up. The person who loses their job and spends 6 months feeling sorry for themselves ends up in a very different place than the person who immediately updates their resume, reaches out to their network, and starts learning new skills. Same event, different choices, different outcomes. This is what taking responsibility looks like. It's not about blaming yourself for everything that happens. It's about recognizing that you always have agency, the power to make choices that move you forward. Let me share a story. 2 friends both got laid off from the same company on the same day. Same circumstances, same severance package, same job market. The first friend spent weeks angry and bitter. He complained about how unfair it was, how the company didn't appreciate him, how hard it would be to find another job at his age. He applied half-heartedly to a few positions, but mostly just felt defeated. The second friend gave herself one day to feel all the emotions, the anger, the fear, the disappointment. Then she made a choice. She decided to view this as an opportunity, not a catastrophe. She reached out to everyone in her network, took an online course to update her skills, and treated her job search like a full-time job. 6 months later, the first friend was still unemployed and still bitter. The second friend had landed a better position at a better company with a higher salary. Same starting point. Different choices, completely different results. This is the principle that changes everything once you truly internalize it. You are not a victim of your circumstances. You are the product of your choices. Now, I want to acknowledge something important. Not everyone starts from the same place. Some people face systemic barriers, discrimination, poverty, or other challenges that others don't face. Life isn't fair, and some people have to work harder than others to get the same results. But even acknowledging that, the principle still holds. Within whatever circumstances you find yourself, you have choices, and those choices matter more than the circumstances themselves. Consider people who've overcome incredible odds, people who grew up in poverty and built successful businesses, people who faced discrimination and became leaders in their fields, people who survived trauma and went on to live fulfilling lives. What did they all have in common? They refused to let their circumstances define their choices. They recognized that while they couldn't control what happened to them, they could control what they did about it. This is the mindset shift that changes everything. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" you start asking, "What am I going to do about this?" Instead of focusing on what you can't control, you focus on what you can. Let's do an honest inventory right now. Think about the major areas of your life. Your career. Are you where you want to be? If not, what choices got you here? Maybe you chose comfort over growth. Maybe you chose to stay in a job you hate because it felt safe. Maybe you chose not to pursue additional training or education. These were all choices. Your relationships. Are you surrounded by people who lift you up? If not, what choices led to that? Maybe you chose to accept treatment you didn't deserve. Maybe you chose not to set boundaries. Maybe you chose to avoid difficult conversations. These were all choices. Your health. Are you as healthy as you want to be? If not, what choices got you here? Maybe you chose convenient food over nutritious food. Maybe you chose the couch over the gym. Maybe you chose short-term comfort over long-term well-being. These were all choices. Your finances. Do you have the financial security you want? If not, what choices led to this? Maybe you chose to spend instead of save. Maybe you chose not to learn about investing. Maybe you chose not to negotiate your salary. These were all choices. I'm not saying this to make you feel bad. I'm saying it to wake you up to your power, because if your choices got you here, your choices can get you somewhere else. The moment you truly accept that you are where you are because of your choices, 2 things happen. First, you stop being a victim. You stop waiting for someone to rescue you or for circumstances to magically improve. You stop blaming others for your problems. Second, you reclaim your power. If your choices created your current reality, then different choices can create a different reality. You're not stuck. You're not powerless. You can change your life by changing your choices. This is simultaneously the most difficult and most liberating truth you'll ever embrace. Difficult, because it requires taking responsibility. Liberating, because it means you're in control. So here's your challenge. For the next week, catch yourself every time you blame circumstances, other people, or bad luck for something in your life. Instead, ask yourself, what choice did I make that contributed to this? What different choice could I make going forward? This isn't about beating yourself up. It's about waking up to your power. Because once you truly understand that you are where you are because of your choices, you'll understand the most important corollary. You can be wherever you want to be by making different choices. And that changes everything. Chapter 2. Every choice has a consequence. Here's something most people don't want to hear. There are no neutral choices. Every decision you make or don't make creates a ripple effect that shapes your future. When you choose to hit the snooze button, you're not just getting 10 more minutes of sleep. You're choosing to start your day rushed and reactive instead of calm and intentional. You're choosing to reinforce a pattern of prioritizing immediate comfort over your goals. When you choose to scroll social media instead of working on your side project, you're not just wasting an hour. You're choosing to delay your dreams. You're choosing to remain in your current situation rather than moving toward the life you want. When you choose to avoid a difficult conversation, you're not just keeping the peace. You're choosing to let resentment build. You're choosing to accept a relationship dynamic that doesn't serve you. Every choice has a consequence. Some are immediate and obvious. Others are delayed and subtle. But they're all there, compounding over time. This is both terrifying and empowering. Terrifying because it means you can't coast through life on autopilot without consequences. Empowering because it means small changes in your daily choices can create massive changes in your life. Let me illustrate this with a simple example. Imagine two people, both 25 years old, both making the same salary. Person A chooses to spend everything they earn. They enjoy nice restaurants, the latest technology, frequent vacations. They live well in the present but save nothing. Person B makes a different choice. They live modestly, spending less than they earn, and invest the difference. Not a huge amount, just $500 a month. Fast forward 40 years. Person A is 65 and facing retirement with little to no savings. They're dependent on Social Security, worried about money, forced to continue working longer than they'd like. Person B is 65 with over $1.2 million saved, assuming average market returns. They have options. They can retire comfortably, travel, help their children, pursue hobbies. They have financial freedom. Same starting point. Different daily choices. Dramatically different outcomes. This principle applies to every area of life. Your health isn't determined by one meal. It's determined by thousands of small food choices made over years. Your relationships aren't destroyed by one argument. They're shaped by thousands of small interactions and choices about how you communicate and show up. Your career isn't built in one interview. It's built through thousands of small choices about how much effort you put in, how you respond to challenges, whether you continue learning and growing. The problem is that consequences aren't always immediate. When you eat poorly today, you don't immediately become unhealthy. When you skip the gym, you don't immediately lose your fitness. When you avoid difficult work, you don't immediately fail. This delayed consequence is dangerous because it creates an illusion that your choices don't matter. You tell yourself, one time won't hurt, or I'll start tomorrow, or this isn't a big deal. But here's the truth. One time does hurt. Not immediately, but cumulatively. Every choice is either moving you toward the life you want or away from it. There's no standing still. Think of it like a boat on water. Even if you're not actively rowing, the current is still moving you. Choosing not to choose is still a choice, and it usually means drifting in whatever direction the current takes you. So how do you use this knowledge? How do you harness the power of consequences instead of being defeated by them? First, start thinking in terms of future you. Before making a choice, ask, will my future self thank me for this? This simple question can transform your decision-making. When you're tempted to skip your workout, ask, will my future self thank me for this? When you're deciding whether to save money or spend it, ask, will my future self thank me for this? When you're choosing between Netflix and working on your goals, ask, will my future self thank me for this? Second, recognize that small choices compound. Just like interest compounds in a bank account, choices compound in your life. Small positive choices repeated over time create extraordinary results. Small negative choices repeated over time create devastating consequences. This means you don't need to make perfect choices all the time. You just need to make slightly better choices consistently. Choose the salad over fries most of the time. Choose to save a little bit regularly. Choose to do the hard work a little more often than you avoid it. These small margins, repeated over time, create the difference between an average life and an exceptional one. Third, pay attention to patterns, not just individual choices. One late night won't ruin your health, but a pattern of staying up late and not getting enough sleep will. One argument won't destroy your relationship, but a pattern of poor communication and unresolved conflict will. Look at the patterns in your life. What are you choosing repeatedly? Those repeated choices are creating your future right now. Fourth, accept that you can't have it all. Every choice comes with trade-offs. When you choose one thing, you're simultaneously choosing not to choose something else. When you choose to stay in bed, you're choosing not to exercise. When you choose to watch TV, you're choosing not to work on your goals. This isn't meant to make you feel guilty. It's meant to make you conscious. You can have anything you want, but you can't have everything you want. Choose wisely. Let me share a powerful framework. The 10-10-10 rule. When facing a decision, ask yourself, how will I feel about this choice 10 minutes from now? 10 months from now? 10 years from now? This helps you see beyond the immediate gratification or discomfort to the longer-term consequences. The choice that feels good in 10 minutes might feel terrible in 10 months. The choice that's uncomfortable in 10 minutes might feel amazing in 10 years. Here's the bottom line. You're making choices all day, every day, whether you realize it or not. And every single one of those choices has consequences. Some are building the life you want. Others are undermining it. The question is, are you making these choices consciously and deliberately, or are you drifting along, letting default patterns and immediate impulses guide you? Because if you're not deliberately creating your future through your choices, you're accidentally creating it anyway. And accidental futures are rarely the ones we want. So start paying attention. Start connecting your choices to their consequences. Start asking yourself, what am I choosing right now? And where will this choice lead me? Your future self is counting on you to choose wisely. Don't let them down. Chapter 3. The choice to take responsibility. There's one choice that changes everything. One decision that, once made, transforms how you experience life. And that choice is this: taking full responsibility for your life. Not partial responsibility, not conditional responsibility. Full, complete, unwavering responsibility. This means accepting that you are responsible for your happiness, your success, your relationships, your health, your finances, all of it. Not your parents, not your boss, not the government, not the economy, not your past, you. Now, before you close your mind to this idea, let me be clear about what responsibility means and what it doesn't mean. Taking responsibility doesn't mean everything is your fault. You didn't cause your childhood trauma. You didn't create systemic inequalities. You didn't choose to be born into the circumstances you were born into. But here's what you are responsible for: what you do about it, how you respond, what meaning you assign to your experiences, the choices you make going forward. Viktor Frankl, whom I mentioned earlier, said it best. Between stimulus and response there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. Most people give away this power without realizing it. They live in reaction mode, blaming circumstances and other people for their problems. And in doing so, they surrender their power to change anything. Let me give you an example. Two people both had difficult childhoods with unsupportive parents. The first person spends their adult life saying, "My parents messed me up. That's why I struggle with relationships. That's why I can't succeed. That's why I have problems." They're trapped in their past, using it as an excuse for why they can't move forward. The second person says, "My childhood was difficult and it affected me in real ways, but I'm an adult now, and I'm responsible for healing myself and creating the life I want. My past is an explanation, but not an excuse. Same circumstances, different choices about responsibility, completely different lives." When you blame others or circumstances for your situation, you're essentially saying, "I'm powerless. I can't do anything until they change or the situation changes." You become a victim, waiting for external conditions to improve before you can be happy or successful. But when you take responsibility, you're saying, "I have power. I can take action. I can create change regardless of what's happening around me." You become empowered, focused on what you can control rather than what you can't. This doesn't mean you have to do everything alone. Taking responsibility doesn't mean refusing help or support. It means recognizing that ultimately your life is your project. You're the CEO of your own existence. You can hire consultants, get advisors, build a team, but the final accountability rests with you. Let's talk about the victim mindset versus the responsibility mindset. The victim mindset sounds like this: I can't do that because it's not fair that they should have. If only I would. But the responsibility mindset sounds like this: what can I do about this? How can I make this work? What's within my control? What do I need to learn? What's my next step? Notice the difference? The victim mindset focuses on blame and limitations. The responsibility mindset focuses on action and possibilities. Here's a practical exercise. For the next 24 hours, eliminate all blame from your vocabulary. You don't blame traffic, your coworkers, the weather, your parents, your circumstances, nothing. Instead, focus entirely on what you can do. This is harder than it sounds. You'll be shocked at how often you automatically blame something or someone when things don't go your way. But this awareness is the first step toward taking responsibility. Now let's address a common objection. But what about things that really aren't my fault? What about discrimination? What about systemic barriers? What about legitimate hardships? These things are real, and they're not your fault. But here's the crucial distinction. Fault and responsibility are not the same thing. It's not your fault that you face barriers others don't face, but it is your responsibility to figure out how to navigate them. It's not your fault that life isn't fair, but it is your responsibility to play the hand you've been dealt as well as you possibly can. This isn't about fairness. It's about effectiveness. Blame might make you feel better temporarily, but it doesn't change anything. Responsibility might be harder emotionally, but it's the only path to actual change. Let me share a story about a woman named Sarah. She grew up in poverty, with a single mother who struggled with addiction. She had every reason to become a victim of her circumstances, and for a while she did. She dropped out of high school, got into trouble, and blamed her mother and her situation for her problems. Then something shifted. She decided to take responsibility. Not responsibility for her childhood. That wasn't her fault, but responsibility for her future. She got her GED. She worked multiple jobs while going to community college. She sought out mentors. She made hard choices and sacrifices. Today, she's a successful social worker helping other kids from similar backgrounds. She didn't wait for her circumstances to change. She changed her relationship with her circumstances by taking responsibility for her response to them. That's the power of this choice. Taking responsibility also means accepting the consequences of your choices without complaint. When you make a bad decision, you own it. You don't make excuses. You don't shift blame. You say, I made that choice and this is the result. Now, what am I going to do about it? This level of ownership is rare. Most people are quick to take credit when things go well, but equally quick to find someone to blame when things go wrong. But true responsibility means owning both the wins and the losses. Here's what happens when you fully embrace responsibility. First, you stop wasting energy on resentment and blame. That energy becomes available for productive action. Second, you start seeing solutions instead of just problems. When you're not focused on whose fault something is, you can focus on what to do about it. Third, you gain respect from others. People respect those who own their choices and their lives. They're drawn to people who don't make excuses. Fourth, you become more confident. When you know that you're in charge of your life, that you have the power to change things through your choices, you naturally feel more capable and confident. Fifth, you experience more freedom. Paradoxically, taking responsibility for everything in your life is liberating. When you're not a victim, you're not trapped. You always have options. But I'll be honest, taking responsibility is hard. It's much easier to blame. It's more comfortable to play victim. It requires less from you. But easy and comfortable don't create the life you want. Taking responsibility does. So here's your challenge. Starting today, take 100% responsibility for your life. Not 99%. Not everything except this one thing that really wasn't my fault. 100%. When something goes wrong, your first question should be, what's my role in this? What could I have done differently? What can I do now? When something goes right, recognize your contribution. Acknowledge the choices you made that led to that success. Stop waiting for someone to save you. Stop waiting for circumstances to change. Stop blaming others for where you are. Take responsibility. Take action. Take control. Because the moment you do, everything changes. The moment you stop being a victim and start being the author of your life, you unlock possibilities you couldn't see before. Your life is your responsibility. That's not a burden. It's your greatest power. Use it. Chapter 4. Small choices create big results. We live in a culture obsessed with big, dramatic changes. We want the transformation story, the overnight success, the radical makeover. We're drawn to the idea that one massive decision will change everything. But here's the truth that nobody wants to hear. Your life isn't shaped by the occasional big decision. It's shaped by the hundreds of small choices you make every single day. The choice to wake up when your alarm goes off or hit snooze. The choice to eat a nutritious breakfast or grab fast food. The choice to speak kindly to yourself or engage in negative self-talk. The choice to take the stairs or the elevator. The choice to read for 20 minutes or scroll social media. These seem insignificant in the moment. That's why most people don't pay attention to them. But these small choices, repeated consistently over time, create the trajectory of your entire life. Let me give you a clear example. Imagine someone who decides they want to get in shape. They have two approaches they could take. Approach A. They go all in. They sign up for an expensive gym membership, buy all new workout clothes, commit to working out 2 hours a day, completely overhaul their diet overnight. They're motivated and determined. Approach B. They start small. They commit to just 10 minutes of exercise every morning. They add one vegetable to each meal. They take the stairs instead of the elevator. They drink 1 extra glass of water per day. Which approach do you think is more likely to succeed long term? If you guessed approach B, you're right. Here's why. Approach A relies on motivation, which is temporary. Approach B builds habits, which are permanent. The person doing approach A might be able to maintain that intensity for a few weeks, maybe even a couple months. But eventually life happens. They get busy. They get tired. Their motivation wanes. And because they went all or nothing, when they slip up, they tend to abandon the whole thing. The person doing approach B builds sustainable habits. 10 minutes of exercise is easy to maintain even on busy days. Adding vegetables doesn't require a complete lifestyle overhaul. These small changes don't feel overwhelming, so they stick. And over time, they compound into significant results. This is the power of small choices. They're sustainable, they're cumulative, and they create lasting change. James Clear, in his book Atomic Habits, talks about the concept of getting 1% better every day. If you improve by just 1% daily, by the end of the year, you're not just 365% better, you're actually 37 times better because of the compounding effect. Think about that. You don't need to make massive changes. You just need to make small improvements consistently. Now, this principle works in both directions. Just as small positive choices compound into success, small negative choices compound into failure. Spending $5 on coffee every day might not seem significant, but over a year, that's over $1 in $800. Over a decade, it's $18,000 plus lost investment returns. That one small daily choice has massive long-term consequences. Watching one episode of TV before bed might not seem harmful, but if that episode turns into 3, and you do that every night, you're spending over 500 hours per year, more than 12 full work weeks, watching television. That's 500 hours you could have spent learning a skill, building a business, strengthening relationships, or pursuing a passion. The danger of small negative choices is that they don't feel dangerous in the moment. You tell yourself, it's just this once, or this one choice won't make a difference. And you're right, one choice won't make a difference. But it's never just one choice. It's the pattern of choices that defines your life. Here's a framework for evaluating your small daily choices, the rule of 100. For any action, ask yourself, if I did this 100 times, where would it lead me? If you ate that donut 100 times, what would happen to your health? If you skipped your workout 100 times, what would happen to your fitness? If you complained about your job 100 times instead of looking for a new one, where would you be? This helps you see beyond the immediate choice to its cumulative impact. Let me share a powerful story. There was a man who wanted to become a writer but felt overwhelmed by the idea of writing a book. So instead of focusing on the book, he made one small choice. Write 200 words every day. 100 words. That's less than 1 page. It took him about 15 minutes. Some days he felt inspired and wrote more, but he never wrote less than 200. After a year, he had written 73,000 words, enough for a full book. After 2 years, he had 2 books, and he'd built a habit that made writing feel effortless. He didn't start by trying to write for hours every day. He started with a choice so small that it felt almost too easy. But that small choice, repeated consistently, created extraordinary results. This is how you transform your life, not through heroic effort and dramatic gestures, but through small, consistent choices that align with who you want to become. So what small choices should you focus on? Here are some that have outsized impact. The choice to move your body every day, even if it's just for 10 minutes. Movement compounds into health, energy, and longevity. The choice to read for 15 minutes daily. Knowledge compounds into wisdom, skills, and opportunities. The choice to express gratitude each morning. Gratitude compounds into happiness, better relationships, and mental well-being. The choice to save a small amount of money consistently. Savings compound into financial security and freedom. The choice to speak kindly to yourself. Self-compassion compounds into confidence and resilience. The choice to go to bed at a reasonable time. Sleep compounds into better health, clearer thinking, and emotional stability. Notice that none of these require massive effort. They're all doable, even on your busiest, most challenging days. That's the point. Small choices work because they're sustainable. But here's the catch. Small choices only create big results if you make them consistently. One salad doesn't make you healthy. One workout doesn't get you fit. One day of saving money doesn't make you financially secure. It's the repetition that creates the transformation. And that's where most people fail. They start strong, but they don't stick with it long enough for the compound effect to kick in. So how do you ensure consistency? You make it easy. You remove friction. You build systems. Don't rely on motivation. That's unreliable. Instead, make your desired choice the path of least resistance. Want to exercise in the morning? Put your workout clothes next to your bed the night before. Want to eat healthier? Prep your meals on Sunday. Want to read more? Keep a book on your nightstand instead of your phone. Small changes in your environment can make your desired choices automatic. Here's another key insight. Focus on systems, not goals. A goal is, I want to lose 20 pounds. A system is, I make choices that a healthy person would make. The goal is the outcome you want. The system is the small daily choices that create that outcome. Goals are finite. Once you reach them, you stop. Systems are infinite. They become who you are. When you focus on making small, positive choices consistently, you're not just working toward a goal. You're becoming a different person. You're building an identity. And that's when real, lasting change happens. So here's your challenge. Identify one small, positive choice you can make every single day. Just one. Something so small that you can't fail. Something that takes less than 15 minutes, then commit to it for 30 days. Don't worry about big transformations. Just focus on showing up and making that one small choice every single day. Track it. Check it off. Build the streak. Prove to yourself that you can be consistent. After 30 days, you'll have made that choice 30 times. You'll have built momentum. You'll have evidence that you're the kind of person who follows through. And you'll be ready to add another small choice. That's how you transform your life. Not through dramatic overhauls that don't last, but through small choices that compound over time. Remember, you don't have to change everything. You just have to change something. Start small. Stay consistent. Trust the process, because small choices made consistently create big results. And big results create the extraordinary life you deserve. Chapter 5. You can't control everything, but you can control your response. Life is unpredictable. Plans fall apart. People disappoint you. Unexpected challenges arise. Things don't go the way you wanted them to. That's not just a possibility, it's a guarantee. You will face setbacks. You will experience loss. You will encounter obstacles. You will deal with circumstances beyond your control. And here's the critical question. When those things happen, what will you choose to do? Because while you can't control what happens to you, you can always control how you respond. And that response, that choice, makes all the difference. Let me tell you about 2 people who lost their jobs on the same day during a company-wide layoff. Person A took it as a personal failure. They spent months angry, bitter, and depressed. They complained to anyone who would listen about how unfair it was. They sent out a few half-hearted job applications, but mostly wallowed in self-pity. A year later, they were still unemployed, still bitter, and blaming the company for ruining their life. Person B was devastated too. They allowed themselves to feel the disappointment and fear, but then they made a choice about how to respond. They updated their skills, networked actively, and treated their job search like a full-time job. They chose to see this as an opportunity for growth rather than a catastrophe. 6 months later, they had a better job with better pay. They later said that getting laid off was one of the best things that ever happened to them. Same event, completely different responses, completely different outcomes. This is the fundamental truth of life. You can't control the weather, but you can control whether you bring an umbrella. You can't control how others treat you, but you can control how you react. You can't control what cards you're dealt, but you can control how you play them. The Stoic philosophers understood this deeply. They distinguished between what's in our control and what's not. In our control, our thoughts, our choices, our responses, our effort. Not in our control, other people's actions, outcomes, circumstances, the past. They taught that suffering comes not from events themselves, but from our judgments about those events. You're not upset because it's raining. You're upset because you believe it shouldn't be raining. You're not angry because someone cut you off in traffic. You're angry because you believe they shouldn't have done that. But reality doesn't care about your beliefs about how things should be. Things are how they are. The only question is, what will you choose to do about it? Here's a powerful framework. When something happens that you don't like, you have 3 options. Option 1. Change the situation. If you don't like something and you can change it, change it. Don't complain. Don't suffer needlessly. Take action. Option 2. Change your relationship to the situation. If you can't change it, can you change how you think about it? Can you find a different perspective? Can you accept it? Option 3. Leave the situation. If you can't change it and you can't accept it, remove yourself from it. What's not an option? Staying in the situation, not changing anything, and just complaining about it. That's choosing to suffer, and it's the most common response. Let me give you some examples of how this works in practice. You hate your job. Option 1. Change it. Ask for different responsibilities, negotiate better conditions, or work on improving your skills. Option 2. Change your perspective. Find meaning in the work, focus on the positive aspects, or use it as a learning opportunity. Option 3. Leave. Find a new job. What doesn't work? Staying in the job, doing nothing to improve it, and complaining about it every day for years. Yet that's what most people do. Your relationship isn't working. Option 1. Change it. Have honest conversations, go to couples therapy, make different choices about how you interact. Option 2. Change your perspective. Adjust your expectations, focus on what's good. Practice acceptance. Option 3. Leave the relationship. What doesn't work? Staying in an unhappy relationship, not working on it, and just being miserable. Yet people do this all the time. See the pattern? In every situation, you have choices, but you have to actually choose one. Passively staying in a bad situation and complaining is not a legitimate option. It's choosing to suffer. Now, let's talk about the most important thing you can control. Your thoughts. Your thoughts create your emotions. Your emotions influence your actions. Your actions create your results. So if you can control your thoughts, you can influence everything else. But most people don't control their thoughts. They let their minds run wild, accepting every thought as truth, getting swept away by every emotion. They're like a rider on a runaway horse, being taken wherever the horse wants to go. But you can learn to direct your thinking. You can choose which thoughts to focus on and which to dismiss. You can question your automatic assumptions. You can reframe situations in more empowering ways. Here's an example. You give a presentation and one person in the audience looks bored. Your automatic thought might be, "They hate this. I'm terrible at presenting. This is a disaster." But you can choose to question that thought. Do I know for sure they hate it? Maybe they're tired. Maybe they're thinking about something else. Maybe everyone else is engaged. Am I going to let one person's expression ruin my experience? That's controlling your response. You can't control whether someone looks bored, but you can control what meaning you assign to it and how you let it affect you. Let me share a powerful technique. The pause. When something happens that triggers you, pause before reacting. Take a breath. Count to 10. Create space between the stimulus and your response. In that space, you have power. You can choose your response rather than just reacting automatically. You can ask yourself, how do I want to handle this? What response would I be proud of later? What would my best self do? This simple pause can transform your life. It's the difference between sending an angry email you'll regret and taking time to craft a thoughtful response. It's the difference between yelling at your kids and speaking to them calmly. It's the difference between spiraling into anxiety and choosing to focus on what you can control. Here's another powerful principle. You can choose what you focus on. In any situation, there are multiple things you could focus on. When you lose your job, you could focus on the injustice of it, or you could focus on the new opportunities available to you. When someone criticizes you, you could focus on their harshness, or you could focus on whether there's any valid feedback you can use. What you focus on expands. If you focus on problems, you'll see more problems. If you focus on possibilities, you'll see more possibilities. This isn't about toxic positivity or pretending bad things aren't happening. It's about choosing to direct your attention in ways that empower you rather than victimize you. Let me tell you about a woman named Sarah who was diagnosed with a serious illness. She had every reason to feel angry and hopeless. And initially she did, but then she made a choice. She decided that while she couldn't control having this illness, she could control how she responded to it. She chose to focus on what she could do: research treatments, maintain a positive attitude, spend quality time with loved ones, find meaning in her struggle. She said that the illness, as terrible as it was, taught her more about living than any other experience in her life. Not because the illness was good, but because she chose a response that served her. That's the power you have. In every moment, you're choosing your response. The question is, are you making that choice consciously and deliberately, or are you just reacting automatically? Here's your challenge. For the next week, practice the pause. When something happens that bothers you, someone cuts you off in traffic, you get critical feedback, things don't go as planned, pause before reacting. Take a breath. Remind yourself that you have a choice in how you respond. Ask yourself, what response would serve me best here? What would my highest self do? Then make a conscious choice. You'll be amazed at how much power you reclaim when you stop reacting automatically and start responding deliberately. Remember, you can't control everything that happens to you, but you can always control your response. And your response determines your experience of life. Choose wisely. Chapter 6. The choice between fear and courage. Every day you face a fundamental choice. Will you let fear dictate your decisions, or will you choose courage? This isn't a dramatic once-in-a-lifetime choice. It's a choice you make multiple times a day, in small ways and big ways. And those choices determine whether you expand into the life you want or contract into the life you're afraid to leave. Fear is a natural part of being human. It's designed to keep you safe. When our ancestors heard a rustle in the bushes, fear told them to run, and that saved their lives. Fear served an important evolutionary purpose. But here's the problem. In modern life, most of the things we fear aren't actually dangerous. We're not running from predators. We're afraid of rejection, failure, judgment, uncertainty, change. These fears feel life-threatening, but they're not. They're just uncomfortable. And yet we let these fears control our choices. We stay in jobs we hate because we're afraid of the unknown. We don't pursue our dreams because we're afraid of failure. We don't have difficult conversations because we're afraid of conflict. We don't take risks because we're afraid of what might go wrong. In doing so, we choose a life of regret over a life of possibility. Let me be clear. I'm not saying you should ignore fear. Fear often contains important information. If you feel fear about walking alone in a dangerous neighborhood at night, listen to that. That's legitimate danger, but most of the fear you experience isn't about legitimate danger. It's about your ego, your comfort zone, your need for certainty and approval. And that kind of fear, you need to choose to move through it. Because here's the truth. Everything you want is on the other side of fear. Want a better career? You'll have to face the fear of applying for jobs you might not get, of negotiating for what you deserve, of taking on challenges you're not sure you can handle. Want better relationships? You'll have to face the fear of being vulnerable, of having difficult conversations, of setting boundaries, of potentially being rejected. Want to pursue your dreams? You'll have to face the fear of failure, of judgment, of investing time and energy in something that might not work out. Every meaningful goal requires you to move through fear. There's no way around it. So the question isn't, how do I eliminate fear? The question is, how do I choose courage in the presence of fear? And the answer is simpler than you might think. You just choose it. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's the choice to act despite fear. Let me tell you about Sarah. She had a stable corporate job that paid well but made her miserable. For 5 years, she dreamed of starting her own business. She had ideas, skills, and even some savings. But she was paralyzed by fear. What if I fail? What if I waste my savings? What if people think I'm crazy? What if I can't make it work? So she stayed in her job day after day, year after year, increasingly resentful and depressed. Then something shifted. She realized that staying in the job was also a choice to let fear control her life. She recognized that she was already failing by not trying, so she made a different choice. She chose courage. She quit her job and started her business. Was she still afraid? Absolutely. The fear didn't go away. But she chose to act anyway, and she discovered that she was more capable than she knew. Her business grew. She found fulfillment she'd never experienced in corporate life. And she gained something even more valuable, the knowledge that she could choose courage. Here's a powerful framework for working with fear. The "what's the worst that could happen" exercise. When you're facing a fear-inducing decision, ask yourself, what's the worst that could realistically happen? Not your catastrophic imagination, but the actual worst-case scenario. Then ask, could I handle that? The answer is almost always yes. You're afraid to start a business? Worst case, it fails and you lose your investment. Could you handle that? You'd get another job. You'd rebuild. You'd survive. You're afraid to ask someone out? Worst case, they say no. Could you handle that? You'd feel embarrassed for a while, then you'd move on. You'd survive. Most of what we fear is survivable, and knowing that you could handle the worst-case scenario makes it easier to choose courage. Here's another key insight. Fear grows when you avoid it and shrinks when you face it. Every time you let fear stop you, you reinforce it. You teach yourself that the fear is valid, that you can't handle it, that you need to avoid it. The fear gets stronger, but every time you choose courage and act despite fear, you weaken it. You prove to yourself that the fear was manageable, that you can handle discomfort, that courage is possible. The fear gets smaller. This is why people who regularly face their fears become more courageous over time. They've built the courage muscle. Let me give you a practical challenge. Identify one thing you're afraid to do, something that would genuinely improve your life, but that fear has stopped you from doing. Then, commit to doing it within the next week. Not perfectly. Not when you feel completely ready. Just do it. Have that difficult conversation. Apply for that opportunity. Start that project. Take that risk. You'll be afraid. That's okay. Choose courage anyway. Take action despite the fear, and notice what happens. You'll probably discover that the fear was worse than the reality. You'll survive. You might even thrive. And you'll prove to yourself that you're capable of choosing courage. Let me address one more thing. The relationship between courage and regret. Bronnie Ware, a palliative care nurse, wrote about the top regrets of the dying. Number 1, I wish I'd had the courage to live a life true to myself, not the life others expected of me. Not, I wish I'd taken fewer risks. Not, I wish I'd played it safer. They wished they'd been more courageous. Here's what this tells us. The pain of choosing courage might be sharp but temporary. The pain of not choosing courage is dull but permanent. You might feel fear and discomfort when you take a risk, but that fades. What doesn't fade is the regret of never trying, the wondering, what if, the knowledge that you let fear control your life. So which do you choose? A few moments of discomfort as you face your fear, or a lifetime of regret because you didn't? The choice is yours, but choose wisely, because every day you let fear make your decisions. You're choosing a smaller life than you deserve. Every day you choose courage. You're choosing possibility, growth, and the life you actually want. Feel the fear. Acknowledge it. Thank it for trying to protect you. Then choose courage anyway. Choose to apply for that job even though you might not get it. Choose to start that business even though it might fail. Choose to have that conversation even though it might be uncomfortable. Choose to pursue your dreams even though success isn't guaranteed. Choose courage. Choose possibility. Choose the life you want instead of the life fear wants you to have, because at the end of your life, you won't regret the chances you took. You'll regret the chances you didn't take because fear told you not to. Don't let fear write your story.
Choose courage.
Choose to live fully. Choose to act despite being afraid. That's the choice that changes everything. Chapter 7. You choose your thoughts. Here's a truth that will transform your life. You are not your thoughts. You are the observer of your thoughts, and that means you can choose which thoughts to believe and which to dismiss. Most people believe every thought that crosses their mind. A negative thought appears, and they accept it as truth. I'm not good enough. This will never work. I always mess things up. They hear these thoughts and believe them without question, but thoughts are just mental events. They're not facts. They're not reality. They're just neurons firing in your brain, creating stories. And here's the powerful part. You can choose which stories to listen to. Your mind will generate thousands of thoughts every day. Some will be helpful. Many will not be. Some will empower you. Many will limit you. The question isn't whether negative thoughts will appear. They will. The question is, will you believe them? Think of your mind like a radio constantly broadcasting different stations. Some stations play music that makes you feel energized and capable. Others play static and noise that makes you feel anxious and inadequate. You can't stop the radio from broadcasting all those stations, but you can choose which one you tune into. When a limiting thought appears, I can't do this, you can choose to examine it. Is that actually true? Or is it just fear speaking? What evidence do I have for and against this thought? What would be a more empowering way to think about this? Let me give you a practical example. You're about to give a presentation, and the thought appears, I'm going to embarrass myself. Most people would let that thought spiral. They'd feel anxious, their confidence would drop, and they might actually perform poorly as a result. But what if you chose differently? What if you caught that thought and questioned it? Is that true? Have I prepared well? Have I given presentations before that went fine? What if instead of embarrassing myself, I actually do a good job? Same situation. Different choice about which thought to believe. Completely different outcome. This isn't about toxic positivity or pretending everything is perfect. It's about not accepting every negative thought as gospel truth. Your brain has a negativity bias. It evolved to keep you safe by scanning for threats, so it's naturally going to generate negative, fearful, limiting thoughts. That's normal. But just because your brain generates those thoughts doesn't mean you have to believe them. Here's a powerful practice. When you notice a negative or limiting thought, treat it like you would a stranger giving you advice. Would you automatically believe a stranger who walked up and said, "You're not good enough"? No, you'd consider the source. You'd question whether they know what they're talking about. Do the same with your thoughts. Just because a thought appears in your mind doesn't make it valid. Another powerful technique. Name your inner critic. When limiting thoughts appear, recognize them as your inner critic speaking. Oh, there's my inner critic again, telling me I'm not good enough. This creates distance between you and the thought. It reminds you that you are not that voice. You're the person observing that voice. And that means you have a choice about whether to listen. You can also choose to focus on empowering thoughts. Your attention is like a spotlight. Whatever you shine it on becomes brighter and more prominent. If you constantly focus on your mistakes, your flaws, what's wrong, that's what you'll see everywhere. If you deliberately focus on your progress, your strengths, what's working, you'll see more of that instead. This isn't about ignoring problems. It's about consciously directing your attention in ways that serve you. Let me share a story. There was a man who struggled with anxiety for years. His mind constantly generated worst-case scenarios. He believed every anxious thought that appeared. Then he learned this principle. Thoughts are not facts. He started observing his thoughts instead of believing them. When an anxious thought appeared, he'd notice it. There's an anxious thought. But he wouldn't automatically believe it or act on it. Over time, this practice transformed his relationship with anxiety. The thoughts still appeared, but they no longer controlled him. He'd learned to choose which thoughts to believe. Here's your challenge. For the next week, become an observer of your thoughts. Don't judge them or try to control them. Just notice them. Oh, there's a thought about not being good enough. There's a thought about being worried about the future. Just observe. Create some distance. Remind yourself, I am not my thoughts. I am the observer of my thoughts. Then, practice choosing. When a limiting thought appears, ask, is this thought helpful? Is it true? Do I want to believe this? If not, consciously choose a different thought. This takes practice. Your old thinking patterns are deeply ingrained. But every time you choose a better thought, you're creating new neural pathways. You're training your brain to think differently. Here's what happens when you master this. You stop being a victim of your thoughts. You stop letting negative thinking dictate your emotions and actions. You become the conscious chooser of what you think, and therefore how you feel and what you do. Your thoughts create your emotions. Your emotions influence your actions. Your actions create your results. So if you can control your thoughts, you can influence everything else. But most people don't realize they have this power. They think thoughts just happen to them. They believe whatever their mind generates. They're controlled by their thinking rather than controlling their thinking. You have another choice. You can become the master of your mind instead of its servant. Remember, you can't always control what thoughts appear, but you can always choose which ones you believe, and which ones you let guide your actions. That choice, the choice to consciously select your thoughts, is one of the most powerful choices you'll ever make. So start today. Observe your thoughts. Question the negative ones. Choose better ones. And watch how your life transforms when you stop believing every thought that crosses your mind. You are not your thoughts. You are the one who chooses what to do with your thoughts, and that makes all the difference. Chapter 8. The Choice to Grow or Stay Comfortable. Here's a fundamental truth about life. You're either growing or you're dying. There's no standing still. You're either expanding your capabilities, learning new things, and becoming more, or you're stagnating, staying the same, and actually declining. And every day you face a choice between growth and comfort. Growth happens outside your comfort zone. It happens when you do things that scare you a little, challenge you, push you beyond what you already know how to do. Comfort happens when you stay in the familiar, the easy, the safe. Most people choose comfort. It makes sense. Comfort feels good. Growth feels uncomfortable, uncertain, sometimes even painful. So people default to what they know, what feels safe, what requires the least effort. But here's what they don't realize. Choosing comfort consistently leads to a life of regret. Because when you're always choosing comfort, you're not developing new skills, not having new experiences, not becoming capable of more. You're staying exactly where you are while the world moves forward around you. Think about the areas of your life where you're not satisfied. Your career, your relationships, your health, your finances. Chances are, these are areas where you've been choosing comfort over growth. Maybe you're in a job that's fine but not fulfilling because it feels too risky to pursue something you'd actually love. Maybe your relationship is okay but not great because it's easier to avoid difficult conversations than to work through issues. Maybe you're not as healthy as you want to be because it's more comfortable to maintain current habits than to change them. Every time you choose comfort, you're also choosing to stay where you are. Every time you choose growth, you're choosing to become more. Let me be clear, I'm not saying you should never be comfortable. Rest is important. Relaxation is important. But there's a difference between temporary comfort that recharges you and chronic comfort seeking that keeps you stuck. Here's how to know the difference. Temporary comfort supports your growth. It's the rest between training sessions. Chronic comfort avoids growth. It's never starting the training in the first place. The most successful, fulfilled people are those who have made peace with discomfort. They've realized that temporary discomfort is the price of long-term growth and satisfaction. They're willing to feel awkward learning a new skill. They're willing to feel nervous trying something new. They're willing to feel uncomfortable having important conversations. They understand that this temporary discomfort leads to permanent growth. Think about anything worthwhile you've ever achieved. Learning to read, learning to ride a bike, graduating from school, building a skill, developing a relationship. Every single one required you to be uncomfortable for a while. You weren't comfortable the first time you tried to read. You weren't comfortable the first time you got on a bike, but you pushed through the discomfort, and eventually you developed the capability. The same principle applies to everything in life. Want to advance in your career? You'll have to be uncomfortable taking on new responsibilities. Want better relationships? You'll have to be uncomfortable being vulnerable and honest. Want to be healthier? You'll have to be uncomfortable changing habits. The question is, Are you willing to be uncomfortable temporarily for the sake of growth? Or would you rather stay comfortable and stay stuck? Here's a powerful question to ask yourself regularly. Am I choosing growth or comfort right now? When you're deciding whether to take on that challenging project, growth or comfort? When you're deciding whether to have that difficult conversation, growth or comfort? When you're deciding whether to try something new, growth or comfort? This simple question helps you make conscious choices instead of just defaulting to what's easy. Think of your comfort zone like a circle. Everything inside the circle feels familiar and safe. Everything outside feels uncomfortable and uncertain. But here's the thing. Your circle can expand. Every time you do something outside your current comfort zone, you expand the circle. What was once uncomfortable becomes comfortable. What was once scary becomes familiar. But the only way to expand your circle is to regularly step outside of it. If you never leave your comfort zone, it never grows. You stay in the same small circle your entire life. The most successful people have huge comfort zones because they've consistently pushed themselves to grow. They've made it a habit to regularly do things that make them uncomfortable. Let me share a story. There was a woman who was terrified of public speaking. She'd avoid it at all costs, but she knew it was holding her back in her career. So she made a choice. She joined Toastmasters. Every week she forced herself to stand up and speak in front of others. It was excruciating at first. She'd shake. Her voice would quiver. She'd lose her train of thought, but she kept showing up. Week after week she chose growth over comfort. And slowly, speaking in public became less terrifying. Then it became manageable. Then it became comfortable. Then it became something she was actually good at. Now she speaks confidently in meetings, presents to clients, and even enjoys it. Her comfort zone expanded because she consistently chose to step outside it. Here's your challenge. Identify one thing you've been avoiding because it's outside your comfort zone. Maybe it's a conversation you need to have. Maybe it's a skill you need to learn. Maybe it's an opportunity you've been too scared to pursue. Then commit to doing it this week, not when you feel ready, not when it feels comfortable. This week, you'll feel uncomfortable. That's the point. That discomfort is growth happening. Lean into it. Embrace it. Know that on the other side of that discomfort is a bigger, more capable version of you. Choose growth over comfort. Choose temporary discomfort over permanent regret. Choose to expand rather than contract, because at the end of your life, you won't wish you'd been more comfortable. You'll wish you'd grown more, experienced more, become more. Make that choice today. Choose growth. Chapter 9. You can choose to start again. Here's something liberating. No matter what choices you've made in the past, no matter how far off track you've gotten, no matter how long you've been stuck, you can choose to start again, right now. Today, your past does not determine your future unless you let it. Every moment is a fresh opportunity to choose differently. This is one of the most empowering truths about life. You're not trapped by your history. You're not doomed to repeat patterns. You're not locked into being the person you've been. You can choose to be someone different starting right now, but most people don't believe this. They look at their past mistakes, their current circumstances, their age, their limitations, and they think, it's too late. I've made too many wrong choices. I'm too far gone. I can't change now. That's a story, a limiting, disempowering story. And it's not true. You can start again at any moment. Not by erasing the past, you can't do that, but by making a new choice right now that begins a different trajectory. Think about it. Every successful person you admire has had failures, setbacks, and periods where they were off track. What made them successful wasn't avoiding mistakes. It was their willingness to start again after mistakes. Walt Disney went bankrupt. Oprah was fired from her first television job. Steve Jobs was kicked out of his own company. J.K. Rowling was a single mother on welfare. They all could have said, "It's over. I failed." Instead, they chose to start again. And here's the beautiful part. Starting again doesn't require permission from anyone. You don't need anyone's approval. You don't need perfect conditions. You don't need to wait for the right time. You just need to choose. Choose to start eating healthier. Not tomorrow, not Monday. Right now with your next meal. Choose to work on your relationship. Not after the next fight. Not when things get better on their own. Right now with a conversation. Choose to pursue your goals. Not when you feel motivated. Not when you have more time. Right now with one small action. Every moment is a chance to begin again. Let's talk about what stops people from starting again. Usually it's shame about the past. They've tried before and failed. They've made mistakes. They've let people down, and that shame keeps them stuck. But here's what you need to understand. Shame is just another feeling, and feelings are not facts. Yes, you made mistakes. Yes, you got off track. Yes, you didn't follow through before. None of that prevents you from choosing differently now. Your past is information. It teaches you what didn't work. It shows you where you need to do things differently. But it doesn't define your future. Let me share a story. There was a man who struggled with his weight for 20 years. He tried diet after diet, gym membership after gym membership. He'd lose weight, gain it back, lose it again, gain it back. By his 40s, he'd given up. He believed he was just destined to be overweight. Then something shifted. He realized he'd been treating each attempt as his last chance, and when it didn't work perfectly, he'd quit entirely. So he made a different choice. Instead of viewing it as pass-fail, he chose to simply start again as many times as necessary. He stopped seeing slip-ups as failures. They were just moments when he needed to start again. Had a bad eating day? Start again the next meal. Skip the gym for a week? Start again the next day. This time, instead of quitting when things weren't perfect, he just kept starting again. And over time, those fresh starts added up. He lost the weight and kept it off because he'd learned that starting again was always an option. This is the power of choosing to start again. It removes the finality of failure. There's no game over. There's just the next choice, the next moment, the next opportunity to begin. Here's another important point. Starting again doesn't mean starting from scratch. You don't lose all the progress you made before. You don't lose the lessons you learned. You're starting again with more knowledge, more experience, more wisdom than you had before. Every attempt, even the failed ones, taught you something. You learned what doesn't work. You learned what triggers derail you. You learned what strategies help you. All of that carries forward. So when you start again, you're not at square one. You're at square one with experience. Now, let me address the fear. But what if I start again and fail again? What if I just keep repeating the same pattern? First, that's possible. But the alternative, not starting again at all, guarantees you stay where you are. At least by starting again, you give yourself a chance. Second, you can make different choices this time. You can learn from what didn't work before. You can try a new approach. You can get help or support you didn't have before. You can be more honest with yourself about what you need. Starting again doesn't mean doing the exact same thing. It means making a new attempt with new wisdom. Here's your challenge. Identify one area of your life where you feel stuck or discouraged. Maybe you've tried to change before, and it didn't work. Maybe you've been avoiding it because you're afraid of failing again. Choose to start again, right now. Not tomorrow, not when conditions are perfect. Now, make one choice that begins moving you in the right direction. Just one. It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be your final attempt. It just has to be a start. And if you slip up tomorrow or next week, you'll start again then too. Because that's what people who ultimately succeed do. They just keep starting again until they get there. Remember, you are not defined by your past choices. You are defined by what you choose right now. So choose to start again. Choose to give yourself another chance. Choose to believe that change is possible. Because it is. And it begins with this choice in this moment. Start again, as many times as it takes. Chapter 10. Design your life with intention. We've talked about responsibility, consequences, small choices, responding to circumstances, facing fear, choosing your thoughts, growth, and starting again. Now it's time to bring it all together. The choice to design your life intentionally. Most people don't design their lives. They just live them. They react to circumstances, follow default paths, do what's expected, and then wonder why they end up somewhere they never wanted to be. But you have another option. You can choose to design your life deliberately. You can decide what you want, make choices that align with that vision, and create a life that's genuinely yours. This starts with clarity. You can't design your life if you don't know what you want it to look like. Yet most people have never spent serious time thinking about this question. What do I actually want my life to be? Not what your parents want. Not what society expects. Not what looks impressive on paper. What do you actually want? Take some time with this. What would your ideal day look like? Who would you spend time with? What work would you do? How would you feel? Where would you live? What would you have accomplished? Get specific. Vague dreams lead to vague actions. I want to be successful doesn't tell you what choices to make. I want to run my own business helping people improve their health while spending mornings with my family gives you direction. Once you have clarity, the next step is aligning your daily choices with that vision. This is where most people fail. They might have a vision, but their daily choices don't support it. They say they want to be healthy, but they choose fast food and skip exercise. They say they want financial freedom, but they spend more than they earn. They say relationships are most important, but they work 80-hour weeks. Your life is created by your daily choices. If your choices don't align with your vision, you'll never get there. Here's a powerful practice. Make a list of your top 5 values, the things that matter most to you. Maybe it's family, health, creativity, freedom, growth, contribution. Then look at how you spend your time, money, and energy. Does it reflect those values, or is there a disconnect? If family is a top value but you work every weekend, there's a disconnect. If health is a top value but you don't prioritize sleep or exercise, there's a disconnect. Designing your life intentionally means closing those gaps. It means making choices every day that reflect what matters most to you. This also requires saying no. You can't do everything. You can't please everyone. Every yes to something is a no to something else. If you say yes to every request at work, you're saying no to time with family. If you say yes to watching TV every evening, you're saying no to working on your goals. If you say yes to maintaining relationships that drain you, you're saying no to relationships that energize you. Intentional living means being selective. It means protecting your time, energy, and attention for what truly matters. Let me share what this looks like in practice. Someone who's designing their life intentionally might start their day with exercise and reflection instead of checking email, because health and clarity are priorities. Schedule regular time with loved ones and protect it like important meetings, because relationships are a priority. Say no to projects that don't align with their goals, even if they seem like good opportunities, because focus is important. Invest in learning and growth, even when it's expensive or time-consuming, because becoming more capable matters. Make time for rest and renewal, even when busy, because sustainability is important. These aren't random choices. They're intentional decisions that align with a clear vision of the life they want to create. Another crucial element: regularly evaluate and adjust. Your life will change. Your priorities might shift. What worked before might not work now. Designing your life isn't a one-time activity. It's an ongoing practice. Set aside time quarterly or annually to review. Is my life still aligned with what matters most to me? What needs to change? What's working well that I should do more of? What's not working that I should eliminate? This kind of intentional reflection prevents you from drifting off course. It keeps you actively creating your life rather than just letting it happen to you. Here's something important. Designing your life intentionally doesn't mean rigidly controlling everything. Life will surprise you. Opportunities will arise you didn't anticipate. Challenges will appear you didn't plan for. The point isn't to control everything. It's to make sure you're steering your own ship rather than just being tossed by waves. Let me also address perfectionism. Your life design doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to look like anyone else's ideal life. It just has to be genuinely yours. Some people want big careers and busy lives. Others want simplicity and quiet. Some want adventure and constant change. Others want stability and routine. None of these is better or worse. They're just different visions. The only wrong choice is living a life that doesn't reflect your own values and desires. Finally, remember that designing your life intentionally is itself a choice. You can continue letting circumstances, other people's expectations, and default patterns determine your life. Or you can choose to take the reins and actively create the life you want. Here's your final challenge. Spend an hour this week designing your life on paper. Write down what you want your life to look like in 5 years. Be specific about how you want to spend your days, who you want to be, what you want to have accomplished. Then look at your current daily choices. What needs to change? What needs to start? What needs to stop? Then make one change today. One choice that moves you toward that vision. Then do it again tomorrow, and the next day, and the day after that. That's how you design your life intentionally, one deliberate choice at a time, consistently aligned with your vision, creating the life you actually want to live. You have one life. Don't live it by default. Choose it, design it, create it intentionally. That's the ultimate power of choice. We've reached the end of this journey, but really, it's just the beginning. Because everything we've talked about, taking responsibility, understanding consequences, choosing your response, facing fear, growing, starting again, designing your life, all of it only matters if you actually use it. So let me leave you with this final truth. Your life, right now, is the sum of all the choices you've made up until this moment. And your life 5 years from now will be the sum of the choices you make starting today. You have incredible power. The power to choose, the power to change, the power to create the life you want, but that power only works if you use it. Stop waiting for perfect conditions. Stop waiting to feel ready. Stop waiting for someone to give you permission. Start choosing. Start acting. Start creating. Every morning you wake up, you have a fresh set of choices ahead of you. Will you choose growth or comfort? Courage or fear? Action or excuses? Intention or default? These choices matter. They accumulate. They compound. They become your life, so choose wisely. Choose deliberately. Choose the life you actually want, not the one you're settling for. Remember, you are not a victim of circumstances. You are not trapped by your past. You are not powerless. You are a decision maker. Every single day, you get to choose who you are and who you're becoming. Some of those choices will be hard. Some will be uncomfortable. Some will require courage you're not sure you have. Make them anyway. Because the alternative, living a life of default choices, missed opportunities, and regrets, is far more painful than any temporary discomfort you'll face by choosing consciously and courageously. Your life is your responsibility. Your happiness is your responsibility. Your success is your responsibility. Your relationships are your responsibility. Your growth is your responsibility. That's not a burden. That's your power. So take it, use it, own it. Stop blaming. Stop making excuses. Stop waiting. Start choosing. Start acting. Start creating the life you want. It won't be perfect. You'll make mistakes. You'll have setbacks. You'll need to start again multiple times. That's okay. That's part of the process. What matters is that you keep choosing, keep trying, keep moving forward. 5 years from now, you'll either be living a life you designed intentionally or a life that happened by default. The difference will be the choices you make starting today. So make them count. Choose responsibility over blame. Choose action over excuses. Choose courage over fear. Choose growth over comfort. Choose intention over default. Choose the life you want, because it's all about choices. And the choice is yours. Now go. Choose. Create. Live. Your extraordinary life is waiting.